Imagine a stunningly beautiful island where almost every village seems to bear the name of a famous whisky. Well, such an island exists. Welcome to Islay, the Queen of the Hebrides. In almost every major airport of the world, you'll find Islay single malt whisky on sale. A remarkable fact, given that only around 3,000 people live on this Scottish island in the southern Hebrides. But as I'll show you in this film, Islay is much more than simply a production line of malt whisky. Islay is accessed either by a short flight from Glasgow or the Calmac ferry from Kennacraig on the mainland. The crossing takes around 2 hours, arriving at picturesque Port Askaig on the south coast or at Port Askaig on the east coast. Once here, you can cycle, take a bus or taxi, but by far the best way to get around is with your own vehicle. But be warned of the heavy congestion at rush hour. For accommodation, there are campsites, a selection of historic hotels and an abundance of characterful self-catering options. On this trip, I'm staying at the old schoolhouse on the Ardtalla estate in the remote southeast corner of the island, along with Serena, my mum and our furry pals. A place to unwind amidst the deer, the pheasants and the curious sheep. It's hard to say what constitutes a good weather day on Islay. Sunshine is nice, of course. The strong prevailing winds keep the air fresh, but without the bountiful rain there would be no whisky. So I say embrace the downpours. There are currently 9 working distilleries on the island. The classics, Ardbeg, Lagavulin, Laphroaig, Bowmore, Brulady, Unahaven and Culleela, together with 2 newer distilleries at Ardtalla, opened in 2019, and Kilcommon, the only farm distillery. The Ardtalla distillery is just a few short weeks away from launching its first malt. The story of whisky distilling on Islay is constantly evolving. Tours are best booked in advance through the distillery websites, particularly in high season. On each visit you'll be able to sample a dram of the local malt, as Serena is doing here, and also stock up on merchandise. The award for the most beautiful workplace on Islay must surely go to the distillery at Culleela, with a view to die for, across the blue waters of the Sound of Islay towards the Paps of Jura, and then in the far distance the mountains of Mull. I wonder if they have any vacancies. For a unique and independent collection of all the island's best malts, then speak to Bryony at the Whisky Vault in Bridgend. And if you have any spare cash, you'll find bottles worth up to £85,000. And whilst you're in Bridgend, add some Scottish refinement to your wardrobe at the Islay Woolen Mill. For a good book about Islay, its whisky, or indeed the Hebrides in general, then make sure to pop into the Celtic House in the island's capital of Bowmore, a grid pattern of whitewashed cottages spilling down to a harbour on Loch Indal. Bowmore was founded in 1768, and legal distilling started shortly thereafter, which is why the name of the village is known all around the world. Away from the distilleries, Islay's most distinctive building is the round church at Bowmore, which dates back to the mid-17th century. And why is it round? Well, according to folklore, it's so that the devil can't hide in any corners. In the northwest, you'll find the peninsula known as the Rins of Islay, an entirely separate island a few thousand years ago, and these days home to 2 of Islay's most picturesque villages, Port Askaig and Port Charlotte. Portnahaven is one of those end-of-the-world type villages that feels like it hasn't changed in centuries. Since 1825 it has been overlooked by the Rins of Islay lighthouse, built by the Stevensons to help shipping to safely pass this treacherous coast. The pretty village of Port Charlotte is more sheltered, facing south across Loch Indal, and is home to the Museum of Island Life and also the stylish Port Charlotte Hotel. In medieval times, the MacDonalds, carrying the title the Lord of the Isles, ruled the Hebridean Islands and much of the west coast of Scotland from this unassuming location at Finlaggan on the east of the island. Today this feels like one of the most peaceful spots in the Hebrides, but back then hundreds of clansmen would arrive here for the assemblies, and although it seems hard to believe, for an investiture of a new lord there could be up to 10,000 people around this loch. In modern times, Finlaggan has become a very popular wedding venue, and I'm sure some of those ceremonies may involve a Mr. and Mrs. MacDonald. The church at Kildalton in the south of the island also dates back to medieval times, but the cross outside it is much older. It was carved around the year 800, almost certainly by one of the same artisans who carved the famous crosses at Iona, based on the striking similarities. Relatively few visitors make the trip to this remote part of the island, but those that do are rewarded with one of Scotland's greatest treasures. There was probably an early Christian monastery here too, but no trace now remains. However, the landscape is dotted with standing stones and burial sites from even older civilisations. History is everywhere on Islay. If you walk out of the Portmore Cafe, you'll stumble across a Neolithic chambered cairn overlooking Loch Indal. Islay once had a fully Gaelic-speaking population of over 10,000. Today's total population is nearer 3,000, with around a quarter speaking Gaelic. There is a hub to preserve and promote the language and culture throughout Argyll at the Islay Gaelic Centre, just outside Bowmore, on the shores of Loch Indal, from where you're bound to see some of the 200 species of bird life, including the thousands of geese that overwinter here and soundtrack the sky at dusk. Whether you've been distillery hopping, hiking the mountains, playing golf, or getting out amongst the birds, you'll need to get some nourishment. A few personal favourites include the Sea Salt Bistro in Port Ellen, the Illicit Still Cafe at Ardtalla, and wow, what a view, the Old Kiln at the Ardbeg Distillery, and the Kilcommon Cafe. The friendliest cafe, well, that has to be the Portmore Community Cafe, just outside Port Charlotte. And what an unbelievable view it has too. So there you have it, your essential guide to the Isle of Islay. If you've never been, then make it your goal to visit Islay.